Ciao, friends. Happy New Year. We have made it. If you were ever wondering if you were going to get through this year at any point in this year, guess what? You made it. We're here. Here we are as the clock ticks down on 2024. I wanted to hop on here and I wanted to talk to you about the last woman we're going to talk about this year. Her story is a perfect way to cap off the year, and it's Esther. So if you don't know who she is, we find her in the Old Testament. Homegirl has her own book, okay? We find it before Job, after Nehemiah. Her story takes place in 460 to 400-ish BC, which is before Christ. So we see it's about, I think it's 8 to 10 chapters-ish. Let me look. Yeah, 10 chapters. So easy enough for you to go and read. I encourage you to read it. Her story truly is super cool. There's a ton of takeaways and just wisdom for you to keep in your back pocket to get you through life. So in chapter 1, we see the story of Queen Vashti, who's the current queen, and we actually see how much our conduct in leadership matters. Her story is an excellent illustration, maybe even a warning for being in leadership and how we must show up in our roles. When we are appointed to these roles, it's really important that we show up as the leaders we were called to be. She didn't. So, long story short, she was no longer a queen. And chapter 2 opens with this need for a new queen to be installed. And so we meet two friends in chapter 2, Mordecai and Hadassah, who's also Esther. She was also known as Esther. So Esther was a Jewish orphan, and she was raised by her cousin Mordecai. Her parents had passed away, and he took her in, and he said, I will love her and raise her as my own. And so we know Esther was beautiful with a lovely figure. Some of the commentary kind of joked that she was fit for a king, right? She had all of the outward traits that you might need for that role. So in chapter 2, she's made queen due to her beauty and her character. And she was a Jewish woman, but she concealed that identity. And so the story continues to unfold. Chapter 3, we meet Haman. And Haman is an Agagite. He's the king's advisor, and he was higher than all the nobles. Everyone knelt down to him except Mordecai. And so, as you can imagine, this was an absolute act of disrespect toward Haman in his eyes. But Mordecai said, no, actually, my loyalty and my reverence is for God, and I won't kneel to anybody but him. Dun, 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 right? So the end of chapter 3, we see this decree that's issued, and it's absolutely horrifying. Mordecai, the decree that Haman puts forth is that he not only wanted to kill Mordecai, but he wanted to destroy all of the Jews in the kingdom, right? So Mordecai learns this and he publicly starts mourning. And so Esther hears about it and she's like, what is going on? She sent people to see what was wrong because this was not normal behavior for Mordecai. Something was clearly upsetting him. So he explained the decree and he asks Esther, he makes a big ask of her. And he said, you must talk to the king and plead with him for the lives of the Jewish people. Like, this is on you. You're the queen. You have to. Esther's afraid, but for good reason, and for good reason. You couldn't just go talk to your husband, the king. Like, it wasn't set up that way. You had to be summoned by him. It had to be the king, the king had to be the one to summon you. So we see Esther chapter 4, verses 12 to 17. When Esther's words were reported to Mordecai, he sent back his answer. Do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone will escape. You alone of all the Jews will escape. If you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your family will perish. Verse 14, and who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this. Friends, I love that verse so much. Verse 15, that Esther sent this reply to Mordecai. Go gather all the Jews who are in Susa, fast for me, do not eat or drink 3 days, 3 nights. I and my attendants are going to do the same. When this is done, I'll go to the king, even though it's against the law, and if I die, I die. That was it. That's what she said. So she went and did all of these things. Mordecai did what he had to do. Esther did what she had to do. And chapter 5 opens with Esther's request to the king. So 5 through 10, I'm not going to read it all. At the second banquet that happens, Esther reveals her Jewish identity. She reveals the plot to expose Haman. The king is absolutely enraged. Haman is executed. Plot twist, chapter 8, a decree couldn't actually be reversed, but there could be another decree made. And so the king allowed a new one, saying that the Jews could defend themselves. So now God gets to show up, right? As if he hasn't all along. But now it's like, okay, we can defend ourselves, but we have to win, right? So chapter 9, the Jews end up having the upper hand. No one can stand against them, and they defeat their enemies. Friends, this story is absolutely incredible. I urge you to read it. Take the time to do it. I want to give you 3 key takeaways from Esther's life. The first one, I feel like we've covered this with so many of these women, but it's courage and faith. Esther stood up for what was right, even when it was so incredibly dangerous. It reminds me of Rahab. It reminds me of so many of these women who had to show, Deborah, Jael, so much courage and faith in moments of absolute terror, fear, danger, all of these things. Second takeaway is this beautiful, I don't even know if it's a concept, it's like a thing, right? Of divine providence. God isn't explicitly mentioned anywhere in Esther, but you can see him there. You can see him working. You can see his intervention. You can see his guidance. We can't always see it in the moment, but looking back, we can go, oh, that was God. Oh, that was so God, right? I'm sure in your own life, sometimes in the moment, you can't see this divine providence. But when you look back and maybe reflect, you can see that. Kind of an interesting thing to do as we close out a year. Go back and look at all the places God showed up. Last thing that we can take away from Esther is identity and purpose. Verse 4, chapter 4, verse 14. And who knows, maybe you came to your royal position for such a time as this. Friends, God doesn't do things on accident. He didn't put you in the places you're in your life on accident. He didn't put people in your life and give you certain relationships, give you certain friendships, give you your job, give you all these things on accident. There's a purpose. He needed you in these places, in these friendships, in front of these people, raising your children in that marriage for the skills and the abilities that he put in you for this time in the world, for this moment, for 2024 and for 2025. God placed you there divinely. His identity for who we are and this purpose for our life is bigger than we can ever imagine. God used Esther because she was willing to be used. And so I have to ask us the question, where are you willing to be used? Where are you not willing to be used that you need to be willing to be used? God always comes through for his people, but we have to be willing. So Esther stepped into her destiny at the most perfect moment. God placed her where he needed her. He gave her the divine providence to be the queen for that moment, even though she was a Jewish woman. He knew what was going to happen, and he knew he needed her courage for that time. Friends, as we step into this new year in a few hours, right? As we step into it, God has uniquely positioned you. Your gifts, your purpose, your influence, none of it is an accident. You're not here by chance. His hand is on everything. So I encourage you not to doubt your role. Friends, you were born for this time. I want to leave you with this quote that I read in the commentary, and it's absolutely amazing. At the end of our lives, let us look back and be able to say that we were willing servants of our King. As you step into this new year and all of the things that it's going to offer us, good and bad and somewhere in between, remember that you were born. You were born for such a time as this. Go find out what there is to be grateful for, and let's go. Happy New Year.